Ahlan wa sahlan. Right now we're going to talk about how to form conditional sentences in Arabic, sentences that allow us to express the ideas of possibility. If X, then Y. First, we're going to talk about how to express these ideas in MSA, Al-Fusha, Modern Standard Arabic, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use them in dialects. So in formal Arabic, there are two words that we use very often to express the conditional possibilities. We can use the word إذا, or we can use the word لو. إذا and لو differ in that إذا is used to express conditions that might be fulfilled, and لو is used to express conditional idea that is contrary to fact, right? Conditions that are impossible or that just aren't going to be fulfilled. Law is a good conditional for love songs, right? If you were my sweetheart, if I had only known, that kind of impossibility. So formal Arabic has some pretty firm grammatical rules about how we use these two words. After each of them, we need to have a past tense verb, even if the idea involves the future, as we're going to see in our examples. And often in Fusha we have a sort of particle to introduce the result clause, the then, right? If X, then Y. So let's take an example. The particles for إذا, our particle is going to be fa, and for لو, our particle is going to be la. So, for example, if I want to say, if I study, I will pass the test, or I will succeed on the test, is what we would say in Arabic. So I can say, إذا درست فسأنجح في الامتحان. So إذا درست, remember again I'm saying if I study, if this condition is fulfilled in the future, right? There's a test, I want to study for it, even though we're talking about the future, because of the rules of conditional sentences in formal Arabic, I have to say درست, conjugated for the past. Future idea, forced by grammatical circumstance to use the past tense. إذا درست فسأنجح في الامتحان. So I will succeed in, I will pass the test, right? So we have our future marker, sa, and then fa connects right with it. Fa really corresponds very well to the then in an if-then clause in English. In English, we can usually get away without the then part, right? I could also say, if I study, I will pass the test. I don't need that then. I could include it, I could skip it. In formal Arabic, it's a good idea to include it. Let's take another example. لو, la, for that impossibility. Suppose you don't speak Spanish, right? And you encounter a Spanish speaker who doesn't speak any language you speak, and we want to say to you, if you spoke Spanish, you would understand him, right? So I say, لو تكلمت اللغة الإسبانية لا فهمته. If you spoke Spanish, which you don't and you aren't going to learn somehow magically in the next 30 seconds, then you would understand him, or you would have understood him, right? Here we have the past tense to express that sort of would, that unfulfilled would condition. We often hear the past tense here, right? So in dialect, things are slightly different. For one thing, the إذا لو distinction in terms of impossibility versus possibility isn't as prominent. In fact, what we tend to hear typically is that in Levantine dialect, no matter what sort of condition we're talking about, we're usually going to hear إذا, or it's often pronounced إذا, right? Or that sort of elides into a Z sound. And in Masri, in Egyptian, again, no matter what the circumstance, whether we're talking about a real possibility or a pie in the sky possibility, we're probably just going to hear law. In Egyptian, we still retain that past tense verb most of the time, even if, again, we're talking about future possibilities, right? So, for example, if we want to say, if you go to the party, you will see Fatima, right? A woman named Fatima. We could say, لو رحت الحفلة هتشوف فاطمة. So here we are, we're talking about the future, but that past tense verb, رحت, if you went, is going to follow لو, just because that's the convention. In Levantine dialect, we have a little more flexibility. Sometimes you'll hear past and sometimes you'll hear present, so we could render the very same sentence in Shami dialect, in Levantine dialect, as إذا بتروح على الحفلة راح تشوف فاطمة. We could also put it in the past tense. It might indicate a slightly greater degree of iffiness. You're a little more unsure of whether or not you're going to go. But typically speaking, you have the choice in Shami of whether to use past or present. And that is the conditional in Arabic.